Hey, everybody. Thank you for being with us on Limitless, where we are focusing on shattering those glass ceilings of limitation and reaching our full potential. I have a very special guest that I'm going to interview and have a discussion with today, and I know that you're going to love the pearls of wisdom and testimony that she has to share with us. Her name is Pastor Chera Whaley. She's from Boise, Idaho, in America, and she and her husband, Dave, Pastor Dave, they are lead pastors for Harvest Life Church there. And she's a powerful minister, teacher. She's a part of my empowerment coaching program. And I just want to welcome her onto Limitless today. Okay, hi, Pastor Chera. I'm so happy to have you on our Limitless program. You're an amazing lady, and I love our friendship and just the interaction that we have. And so I'm so glad to be able to interview you here on the show.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. I'm excited about it.
Okay, well, I've given our viewers just a little bit of background on you, but can you share with us who you are, what's some of your roles, a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so, my role today, I'm a senior pastor, and my husband and I pastor a church. We're getting ready to celebrate actually our 28th year as the senior pastors here. We pioneered it in 1993, so January 31st is our anniversary. Sometimes I'm not sure that I'm old enough to have pastored a church for 28 years, but,
Yes,
but I have.
you started when you were 5, right?
Yes, exactly. I started in childhood, and so now I'm just working into this. So that's the majority of what I've done. I was a youth pastor before that, but my husband always wanted to senior pastor, so we just up and pioneered a church in 1993, a non-denominational church. Without really knowing how to do that and learn the hard way. But over the 28 years, of course, I've grown in what I've done. So now I oversee our women's ministry, and I do work in our office. Like I work in the finance department between the CPA and some of the team. So still get to put my hands in, the day-to-day natural things that you have to do in pastoring a church. And then, of course, we travel not in coronavirus quarantine now, but we travel some and speak in other places. Yeah, pre-quarantine right now we don't go anywhere too much, but so we've done some of that and missions and some of that kind of stuff. But mostly my role is in women's ministry is probably my biggest area, and then just some of the pastoring things that I do.
Fantastic. And I know you're a powerful preacher. I was actually just listening online to your church service, and you spoke this last Sunday. And you really have a great way of presenting God's word, very clearly and anointed and powerful. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's the goal. That's the goal every time you speak.
True.
This is always like that, but
yeah. Well,
but
let me
Sunday
also.
was great. It was really. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say happy anniversary too. But go ahead. What you were saying.
I was just going to say Sunday was kind of interesting. I love those opportunities. When you pastor a church and you pastor the same group of people, and there's a certain, routine to ministry, and they get used to you and some of that. And of course, like anything that you do all the time, you just, you get up and you do, and, you're faithful. But I love it that there are those opportunities, those times when God speaks a timely word for your congregation, or a timely word for the ministry that you're in. And that really was what Sunday was for us. Was, really a timely, specific word. So it was just really powerful. I felt like for us too, feeling it in the house. So
right.
So it was a great chance to do it.
Yeah. What we can do, I think the message was on creating space in your life and margins for what God wants to do. Is that correct? Like that was the theme of it.
Yeah, that's the theme we're on for January. The theme for January is living with margin.
I see.
So our executive pastor, he's done most of our services. So he's taught on that in January, and our New Year's Eve service, my husband kicked it off with really feeling like God was speaking to us about making room for God.
Yeah.
So that for God to work, and I think we all want God to work all the time.
Yeah.
But but we live our lives doing all the things we want to do, full and passionate, which is great. But just finding those places where you can make room for Him to. Make room in your life so that He can step in and do maybe those bigger than you would normally think you could do things. So that's kind of what the focus has been.
Yeah, it was powerful. What we'll do is we'll put a link in our show notes here and in our, when we post this, so that if any of our viewers out there, if you'd like to listen to the message or any of the messages from Harvest Life Church, then you can go to their Facebook, and it's, you guys do live, your services are live, but then of course posted on your Facebook later. So we'll put that in there. But I love that. Yeah, I love that concept, and I think it's one line that I heard you say, and it really resonated. That sometimes we get like clutter in our life, or things just get too filled up, and we don't have the space for the things that are truly priority in our life. But because we have this other, I don't know if you use the word clutter, but it's the way I interpreted it, because I was thinking about just in general in our lives, in our houses, or in our minds, or in our spiritual life. If there's too much built up, and there's some things that we would consider clutter because it's like no longer serving us, it's no longer useful. It might have been good at one time, but it's just taking up space. If we can get rid of that and make room for God, it's so so powerful. So we'll put the link in there so our audience can watch if they want. So I love that that you shared that you made a mention, like you just started, I think, doing church, not necessarily knowing how to do it, but 28 years of now it's successful and great. But I want to ask you a question about breaking through limitation. So I don't know if it would be on that subject or something else, but the theme of this program is shattering those glass ceilings of limitation. And especially when I interview somebody, I love to hear wisdom or a key that they have, or a testimony of overcoming a limitation, an obstacle, and now it's successful and it's fruitful. And so I just want to ask you about that from your own life. What would be one thing? I'm sure you've done it in many areas and many things, but what's one that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, well, thinking about pastoring and is a great. It probably is where that started for me. When we started pastoring, so I was in youth ministry. I got married young. I was 18, and so of course I became the youth pastor's wife. My husband was already the youth pastor. That's a whole other story. But so I was young in ministry, and so to decide to pastor a church at, I was 23 when we started the church, and so. And my husband was ready to go. And like I said, we just jumped in. Maybe that's part of being in your 20s. You're kind of dumb and you're just willing to, risk it all because you don't have anything. And so we jumped in to do it. But I found myself immediately at the beginning of pastoring realizing I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a kid. I realize I'm a kid. And I realized that, we're trying to pastor people who have a lot of years on me, and trying to pastor when I didn't understand what that looked like. So there were so many challenges. And and what I found at the beginning of pastoring for me was that I would have never said I was a super fearful person. My mom would say I'm not fearful at all. As the kid who just, my curiosity caused me to go places and just check things out, and they never knew where I was. But yet, as a young pastor's wife, I realized that there were a lot of these aspects of pastoring that were caused anxiety for me, or sometimes even fear. And so when we first started, it caused me to kind of back out, and just let my husband do the pastoring. And I worked a job like many, pastors and their wives. And especially to start a church. So the church didn't fund us as a full-time calling at that point, so I worked a job. And but I found that I didn't do ministry. And one day my husband just sat down talking to me as a wife. And of course our daughter was young. I think she was 3 or 4 at that time. And and he said, honey, I can you help me do, something? I don't even remember what it was. And, because you're not really pastoring with me, can we pastor more together? And, and I just blurted out, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I don't know what a pastor's wife has to do. And he's like, and so he said, well, okay, I understand, but what, if God called us? And he was just really encouraging, right? Was kind of going through a season. And he just said, God wouldn't call you if he isn't going to give you what you need to do it. And he said, you just need to start looking for what you think you need, what you need. And so I worked at the time at a Christian bookstore here in town. And so I decided, what, I'm going to start looking through books and just see what kind of information there is out there, and just begin to grow and see if I can come across, something that helps. And and of course, so I'm reading some stuff, and I came across, like, probably many people have this experience, a Joyce Meyer quote that just talked about doing it afraid.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
funny because I've met so many people over the years who are like, "Hey, I do stuff afraid because of Joyce Meyer." And but I just read
Do
that
it afraid.
statement and I was like, "Wow, do it afraid." It had just
Mm.
never occurred to me. It was a natural response to come up to something that I felt limited by
Yeah.
in fear, anxiety, or my own feelings of insecurity or inferiority or whatever it was. And I
Mhm.
always backed down, and that was, it was a spiritual moment for me. It really was a word from God for me
Right.
to as a challenge. And so I began from that point. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start, just trying to do things afraid. And that was really where it started for me. I think that,
Wow.
you know maybe in the past I thought that I had to wait till the fear went away,
Yeah.
and I realized that the fear didn't go away. And even today, I mean, many years later, there's things that bring anxiety,
Mhm.
to my thought, and I have to choose to do it afraid. And so that probably was really a breakthrough for me, that
Wow.
God. And what I learned was not just, I think sometimes we tell people do it afraid, and we just, and they think that you just have to go out there and do it, you're going to hate every moment of it. But what I found is that every time I had something that I wanted to do, or that I had to do, that I felt that anxiety, when I pressed through and I did it afraid, God met me there.
Yeah.
And he would increase, really my capacity, I guess. He would increase, I learned so much stuff even in stepping out and doing some of those things that then made those things come easier later on. So I think it's not just that we step out and do it afraid as a challenge, although that was how I heard it at first. But
Mm.
I realized when I did it that there was God has completely empowered me so many times in
Right.
those opportunities
Yeah.
that I took. So
Yeah. That's
I would say that's
yeah.
probably
Wow.
the biggest thing.
That's excellent. It's so true, and especially when we're starting something new in our life, right? Like when we're and so we don't know how to do it because we've not done it before, and so
Right.
all the different emotions. But if it could be fear or anxiety or not feeling ready, I sometimes I
Yeah.
have that feeling like I just don't feel ready, but then I have to
Yeah.
talk myself through it and say, well, almost the same principle, like do it afraid or do it not feeling ready, because I
Yeah.
I am ready. I am. I've
Yeah.
actually have background that puts me in that place. It's just that there's something brand new that has to be developed. So to be ready and to cultivate the skill, I have to move forward. So that's
Yeah.
that's a real pearl of advice that you share today. Do it afraid.
Yeah.
Just do it
Yeah.
afraid. And there really are so many moments in life that's what you have to do. I like that a
So
lot.
true.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you another question, and because we've been friends for a long time. I don't
Yeah.
even know how many years, but let's not go there because
Because we were both 5, I think.
exactly, that's it. I love to
Yeah.
make that joke. We were just 5 when we met. So, but
Yeah.
it's something like over 20 years we've known each other, maybe even
Oh yeah.
longer. And but last year I started doing the empowerment coaching programs, and I think you saw it maybe on my Facebook and somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And you contacted me and asked me about it, and we started doing the program, the empowerment coaching program, which is,
Yeah.
if anyone out there doesn't know, it's like one-on-one sessions where we meet on a weekly basis online and discuss things and work through mind management and breaking limitation and going to new
Mhm.
levels. That's really what coaching's all about. Um, and I just want to ask you, like, why did you do it? Why were you interested in being a part of empowerment coaching program?
Yeah. Well, two reasons. I mean, as I thought about coaching, there was that thought of, there's that moment of anxiety because
Do it afraid?
coaching is exactly.
Right,
So
yeah.
because I knew that
Yeah.
coaching was going to entail digging into, thoughts and parts, oftentimes parts of your life or parts of your thinking that aren't something that are out there. So I
Right.
mean, probably the first thing was like anything that I feel anxiety about. Sometimes I have to be careful because sometimes I just plow in because I don't want to be the person who doesn't do it afraid, and I have to make sure that it is what the Lord wants me to do. So
Right.
but that was my first thought. But I really prayed through, and for me as a senior pastor's wife, there's not as many opportunities to work through the thoughts and feelings that are in your life. And really, it was kind of, we've pastored here a long time, and we love what we do, and we know this is where God has us. So, sometimes people are in seasons of their life where you're looking to do something different, or it's time to do something different, and maybe change jobs, or get married if you've been single, or move to another city, those types of things. And so, but for me, I knew, in my spiritual life, that I was in a place where this is what I'm called to do. I'm not called to live somewhere else or do something, different in the sense of leaving what I'm doing. So I felt stuck, I think, in my life, where I was like, okay, God, I love this. I want to be right in the middle of the will of God. And I know this is the will of God, but I feel stuck. I don't feel challenged. I don't feel, I feel like there's more that I want to do, but I don't know what that more that I want to do is, and I think being a senior pastor sometimes, or a pastor's wife, maybe even more so. I mean, in that, there's not a lot of people to work through that stuff with. So the thought for the empowerment coaching was, is this going to give me an opportunity? Because you have your spouse, right? But I mean, like all people, your spouse, mine loves me, and he's like, do whatever you want, honey, is what he tells me all the time. And I'm like, but I need somebody to help me figure out what I want to do, right. or I know what I want to do, but I want somebody to help me talk through that, because I don't really know what that looks like. So I think really once I realized, first I wanted to not do it because I wanted to be afraid, or didn't, I realized that I felt like it would be a great opportunity. I mean, I love you anyways, and we already have a relationship. So I'm like, looking at you and the stuff you've done, and I'm like, this is just a great opportunity, and it puts me in a challenging position, which I have learned, for me to challenge myself is how I grow. I would love it if I could just be relaxing on a hammock and God just poured all the growth into my life. I have to get myself out there and do things to grow. So that was really the draw, was, okay, I'm stuck, and and I've prayed, and I've read the scripture, and God's spoken to my heart, and I'm good with the Lord, but I still felt stuck, and I knew that it was going to require deeper conversation and more challenging through in the mental side of it. I was good spiritually, but I knew there was something that needed to be talked through, looked at, challenged, and so that was really probably the motivation in the end.
I love it, because I've been thinking a lot about the power of a coach, and just having somebody who's there to maybe help us see outside of our own brain, right? Like, because we have I believe we all need a coach, right? Somebody that understands the skills. But I was just sharing this on another session that I did for Limitless about the best shape of your life and the power of a coach. And I've had that experience too in my life, that a physical coach, in my workouts, having somebody that's focused on me, on my success, and just helping me make small tweaks in what I do, but create a lot of change and momentum because of what could look like just a small change. It could be just an adjustment of a thought process, but it creates all this amazing momentum. And so I love that. So I did that both physically, but also in my, I'm getting coached as well, so that I can continue to grow. And I think, spiritually, we know, like, that's what pastors do for us. They help mentor us, and usually more in the spiritual capacity, whereas the coaching is spiritual, but it's also adding in, I don't know if I should distinguish it both ways, but it's a lot more like mind management and thoughts, which is very biblical, though, in the renewal of the mind, right? So it's still spiritual. But my point is, it's awesome to have somebody that's walking us from one level into the next. And that's what I really hear you saying, is that you already had a lot of success in your life, right? You're pastoring, you're leading. And you knew you weren't, many times when we want to go to a new level, we think we have to change the city or the job. But often we don't need to change our circumstances. We can go to another level even in the midst of our same circumstance, and that's what I hear you saying. So I just want to reiterate that, because there might be somebody listening too. In fact, I think many people listening and in that season of their life. So, but it's been awesome, working together in this way. And so, what is, just to share a testimony and to share, because as we share and as you share, I know that it will really minister to others as well. What's been like a breakthrough that you've had, or a revelation, or a shift, or something? I know there's been many, right? But what's one
Yeah.
that you'd want to share
Yeah.
with the audience in regards, especially with the coaching?
Yeah. Well, and so it goes along with what we were just saying, that, and I like that you pulled out the physical part of it, because I think, I think we all in the church, maybe it's different, outside the church, but in the church, I think we're all aware of the challenges that we need physically, and many people, in our church have gone through getting a trainer or joining a class where you have a trainer, that sort of thing. And you are right as far as in the spiritual, that pastors and leaders are those kinds of spiritual guides, and they and they tell us that we need to do it afraid, or have faith, or those types of things.
Yeah.
But I have found over the years pastoring, and I think this is what I really found from this, that sometimes we underestimate, or we lump together our spirit and our soul like they're the same thing. And so we tell people to to grow, and like to just have faith, or to just think different, right?
Right.
That we have to think the things of the spirit, which is kind of like telling people just don't do that. Well, they already know that they should just not do that, but sometimes people need to be walked through in the natural how to think about not doing that, or why are you doing what you're doing, so that you can figure out how not to do it. And what I found for me with empowerment coaching was that, I was in a place where, where I am, I've had a lot of years of salvation. And so, I know in my life, like, what God's leading me to. And of course I've worked through, like I've had enough years to work through a lot of the sin things, and a lot of the character things. So if I were, so I stepped back from my life, and I realized I feel like I'm stuck, but there's not something specific, maybe that I can pinpoint. But what I didn't realize that the empowerment coaching brought out was, while we were still looking at the things of the spirit and praying together, the aspect of coaching and really talking about why you do something. And what I found for me specifically was that there were thoughts, just natural thoughts that I had. They're not sinful.
Right.
They don't even lack character. They were just things that are completely natural to, they're like things, just things that you think, that these are thoughts that go back to childhood, just things that are normal to me. There were thoughts that I had about myself, that I didn't feel like they were from the enemy, right? I would have never put that there was to me, they weren't negative. Right. So it didn't, had it felt like it was from the enemy, I would have, felt like I needed to get prayer, or, spoken the word, or those types of things. Didn't feel like it was from the enemy. It didn't even, to be honest, feel negative to me.
Right.
It was just a thought about myself. One example that that comes to mind that I'll give for people is that I have always said about myself, or at least in my adult years, that I'm just not much of a visionary. I get that because my husband is Mr. Visionary. He's always got ideas. He's always got plans. He's goal setting and writing in his journal, and wants to do all these new things. And I'm kind of a practical person, and so I'm kind of the get up and go through the routine and do the things you have to do person every day. And so, but at some point in my adult life, and I didn't realize this, or maybe I brought it from childhood, was just kind of a thought that I'm not a visionary. And I didn't feel that was negative. But yet in the coaching, as we talk through it, and as you ask me questions, I realized that thought, it was negative, in that I felt disempowered by it. It was, rather than, like, it didn't give me the courage or the desire to follow after God, or to press into other things. It was like, but it didn't feel negative to me. So, right. Which was weird, because I anticipated that the hindrance should be something I felt as negative. And what I learned through empowerment coaching was that the thing that was hindering me was just a normal thought, a bad habit, or a normal thought pattern, or maybe something that I created at some point to make myself feel better. I don't know. I don't really know but when I realized that disempowered me
Yeah.
from really stepping up to the plate and seeing what to do next, it gave me the coaching really helped me to see that when I'm confronted with that, to step back and ask myself, what is it, why do I feel that? And in the process, and you had mentioned this to me, which then, then weeks later, as we've gone through this for a while, it came to me again, you said to me, well, you have this idea and that idea. It's not that you're not a visionary, which was kind of a surprise to me, but even in the process of time where that habit kind of came back in, it just recently, in the last month or so, came back to me again, to my own self, that wait a minute, I have lots of ideas and things that I want to do.
Right.
And and I had to bring myself back to that place again and say, you know what, this thought it's just not true. It's just a bad habit or whatever. So that was probably the biggest thing I got out of that is just watching those, coming across those things because they're part of our soul. And I think sometimes we as Christians don't, we have all this spiritual and we take time to focus on the natural, but I think sometimes we don't allow God, who is sanctifying us in our spirit, soul, and body, to allow our soul to be sanctified by having those relationships or opportunities like with coaching or whatever it would be to challenge the way we think and to look at whether we've allowed, our thoughts, whether we have thoughts that are hindering us that maybe aren't sinful, but they aren't something God gave us to be empowered by.
Right.
And so it's just, I catch myself all the time, realizing I have a thought and I have to step back from it and say, wait a minute, that thought, I need to think about that.
Right. It's so good. And I love how you've explained it because I think especially like you said, coming from the Christian perspective, we are much more aware of the enemy induced thoughts or the negative thoughts. But of course, and this is true for anybody, and those we know we need to change, right? But it's these other thoughts that actually just, as you said, they're disempowering you. It wasn't empowering. It wasn't a bad thought, but it wasn't helping you. Yeah. Yet we all have habitual thinking. We have patterns of thinking because we have to. The scientists or whoever say that we have somewhere between 60 and 70 thoughts a day. 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a day. So, I said that to a man one time. He's like, "Are you sure that men have that many?" Because the joke is women are always But I don't know. Whatever it is, whatever the number is, even if some people have less, even if it's 50,000 or 40,000 thoughts a day, the majority of those are not conscious thought. Right? It's subconscious thought. It's habitual way of thinking. And we have to have that because we have to live our lives and not consciously think of every single thing. And that's what we're doing through the coaching and through what I really believe. And I'm going to put a course together on this. I'm going to call it Mind Renewal 2.0. Because, because we know biblically we're supposed to renew our mind and this is how we transform. But I don't know that, at least my experience, and I've grown up in the church too, and I've taught and all this, but mostly it's just you got to change your thought. So what do? We try to force ourselves to think something new, but there's this gap between what we really believe and what we want to believe. And we haven't had a lot of tools in bridging that gap. And that's what we're focusing on in coaching. And if there's something too that's there that is maybe creating it to be, we can't just transform it by just seeing it and looking at it, but there's maybe a hindrance that is there. Then we also use prayer. We use what Jesus did on the cross and all of his payment to process. I love that word, to process. I don't necessarily love doing it all the time, but but it's so so powerful in processing our thinking and our beliefs. And what does the Bible say? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and that it's our beliefs that are actually it's attached to our faith, and it's all all interacting. So I love that. And a term I like to use is sneaky thoughts. Like that was a sneaky thought that you had. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm not a visionary. It just sounds like you're just stating a fact about yourself. Yeah. But the truth is, if we think the thought and it's not empowering us, we can find something that's better that would empower. And let me just make a note, even for those that are watching right now. anytime we're identifying also with what we're not, like I'm not a
Yeah.
visionary, there's not much strength in that. It's better to, who are you, you know? Uh, and I do remember having the conversation with you several times, and I remember you saying, I'm not a visionary. And about 20 minutes later in our conversation, you was like, I have all these ideas. And I was like, wait, do you realize you
Right,
you
yeah.
really had two opposing beliefs, because you knew
Yeah.
you had all these ideas, but you also had another belief somewhere that said, I'm not a visionary. And it was that could even be what causes someone to get stuck, because you've got two beliefs that you believe, but they're not coinciding. And so it's reconciling that and finding out, how do we identify a thought? How do we feel it? Feel what it's giving us,
Yeah.
what, like, energy and strength, or is it draining us? And it's
Yeah.
great. So that's awesome that you say that, because of course what we're doing is we're also launching this course as we're recording this and doing this interview, a relationship with self. So how do we relate to ourselves? And we're running this with your church, which I'm so excited about. And
Yeah.
also we're going to open it up to those of you that are listening. And if you want to be a part, we're going to open it up to a broader audience. But we're doing it in partnership with Harvest Life Church. And it's an online course that it has videos online, so a person that's going through it can watch at their own pace. I mean, we recommend one per week, and then there's a handbook that you can download and will help you process. And then we'll also have Zoom calls where we can get together, those that want to be on the call, and have live coaching. We'll do that, but then we'll also record those and put those online. So there's going to be a lot of great stuff. But the idea behind the course is, how do we relate to ourselves, right? We understand that we need to have a good relationship with God. That's number one in our life. And we know that we need to relate to others. But a part that most of us haven't focused on is, how do I relate to myself? How do I think about myself? How do I believe about myself? And that's what you found out, that you were relating to yourself by telling yourself and like absolving yourself to the fact, I'm not a visionary, but it wasn't the best relationship with yourself. And you could improve it. So, yeah, I mean, and you went through the course already, relationship with self. What can you say about that? And especially as we launch it now to your church and to our broader audience.
Yeah. It's just a great course. And, on what we were just talking about, since, and honestly, just this last week or so. So I've been, going through in my mind just the things that I learned, and because it's important to keep as you learn those things, to keep those things spiritual. And so, you and I just had this conversation where I was reminded again, in the last couple of weeks, right? When I told you that, and you were like, yes, remember when I told you? And so I this last couple of weeks, I've been thinking, okay, so again, I was, aware of that in myself. And so I've just been kind of praying. So talking about then bringing the soul and the spiritual back together, just been praying and saying, okay, Lord, why, why really was my question. Maybe it's just my own curiosity. It's like, why do I, has this been a challenge for me? Why do I, why did I, have that thought? And I wasn't really looking maybe as much for, the root of the thought necessarily. I just really kind of wanted, just to get that spiritual freedom to be able to know what it was really, I think, in my own spiritual self. And I really felt like in my prayer time one day that it was just a revelation to me that it was what's the word I want to use? Like not a coping mechanism, but in other words, it was an insecurity like that goes way back to my early pastoring years. That because I didn't feel prepared, because I didn't feel like I knew how to pastor. And then of course, once you start pastoring, like anything that you do in ministry, you come up against conflict, which sometimes is attached to people. And so there were things maybe that I was, conflicts that happened, things that made me feel worse about myself. And I realized that, that it was more, it wasn't really that I didn't believe I was a visionary. It really was tied to a defense of myself. And so then, because I was trying to defend myself, it became something that did not, so in other words, every time I stepped up to do something different or bigger or outside of the norm of what should be, um, I felt challenged because I didn't know how to do that. So it became a mechanism to just say, well, I'm not really much of a visionary, which kept me faithful to do the things that I needed to do,
Yeah.
but limited me from taking some of those challenges maybe that God was giving me to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just realized this in the last couple weeks. So just in talking about, the relationship with self, I just realized that, I mean, I've got a few years under my belt and maybe more than I want. But even at the age I am now, that relationship with self is something, it's something that we have to take our relationship with the Lord, and look at and work at all the time.
Yeah.
And that,
True.
you never, and I think we know this generically speaking, but you never get to the place where you're completely there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're in ministry, it doesn't matter if you've done leadership for a long time, there probably are things in your life, and they may not seem like something you think you need to look at, but they are things you need to look at. So that continually looking at, I just realized that even in my relationship with myself, and that I had these things that I attributed to, well, God will tell me what I need to work on, but I didn't necessarily look at what I thought or what I believed. So taking that opportunity from empowerment coaching and from the prayer and all the things that we've done, and even the stuff I learned in the course, because the course is a lot. I mean, it requires you, just even some of the homework part, it takes a lot of really looking at yourself. And so I've that's what I've done these last couple weeks again. And it brought that, for me, that was a freeing moment for me to realize that, that was something that I had created, in an innocent moment.
Right.
But I created something in an innocent moment of defense and trying to cope with the season I was in,
Right.
that hindered my future season.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, you were saying earlier when I asked about why you did empowerment coaching, you said you felt stuck. So do you feel
Yeah.
like this was one of the, I assume you don't feel that now, or not as much, or,
Right.
right? But would this be one of the areas that you're like, wow, I identified something that was actually keeping me stuck, but I had no idea that that's what it would be. And this has liberated me into basically a new level. Is that accurate, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it really was, because like I said, I didn't, I mean, it just was a natural response. And I didn't even when we came across that, I was like, yeah, I'm a visionary, but I didn't maybe understand why. So it was just so, I mean, it really did. It really gave me it gave me the eyes to see, like, even in the things I'm doing, because there's things that I'm still doing, right? Where, classes that I'm working on, tests that you have to take, those kinds of things, right? Things that I'm still in the process of working on, that, the thought comes back to your, the thoughts, right? Those thoughts that we deal with, which I love because it talks about those a lot. Those thoughts still linger in the back of your mind, just the natural habit thoughts of,
Right.
I'm never going to get this done, or, sometimes I start things I don't finish, right? I have those kinds of thoughts, and that, digging in and even coming in that revelation helped me to realize that, basically to give me that feeling of being unstuck, that, what, yes, I'm still in the process of working on this, and maybe I want to be done with it, but I am going to finish it.
Yeah.
Because it was a vision that I wanted, and I do have ideas, right? So where before I would have said I'm not a visionary, then the thought would have been, well, maybe I shouldn't have started this, because, I just was doing something. It wasn't really a vision to do it.
Yeah.
Where I realized that what I'm doing is what I wanted to do. And so even though I may be delayed in, in being where I want, maybe I'm not as far as I want to be, or I might be delayed in getting something done, it is still, by having that freedom to understand, what, I am a visionary, and I can control my thoughts, and I can think different so that I can be empowered. It's given me, that freedom to feel unstuck in those things and be okay with those things not being complete, maybe. Yeah.
Right. So good. It's awareness. You've really increased your self-awareness, of the thought. And I think that's such a key part for all of us. I think we'll close this down here in a few minutes, but one thing I want to say to our audience is that, it's like cleaning your house, right? We clean our house, and we don't just clean it once and then we're done.
Right.
For whatever
That would be so
reason, right? Or we get up in the morning, we put on our fresh clothes and we do our hair, and by the end of the day, we got to take a shower again, or at least by the next morning. It's just sort of the way of the world that we go from. Things don't normally just get more orderly on its own. It goes into a state of disorder, and we just keep putting it back into order. And of course, once we can create habits that take us in a path that we want to be, and then we create momentum. But it's like the same thing with our mind. So we have these thoughts and ways of thinking, and we do have to be aware. And at least when we're aware, and we're aware without judgment, right? This is something we're going to talk about in the relationship with self course, because somebody out there might be like, I don't know if I want to be more aware of myself, because you might feel afraid because we judge ourselves so much, right? What happens is we aware of something and then we judge ourselves. Why do I think that? Da 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 da. Well, we're going to learn the skills and practice the skills of self-awareness, but without judgment, with observation, no matter what's happening, where we love ourselves, even in the midst of stuff that's, not good, but it's love that will help us move forward. So God loves us, but we also have to love ourselves, and not kick ourselves and judge ourselves, or be hating ourselves because of something we find. So I just want to say that to everybody out there, but as we find these things, and what you're saying is you're more, I have this thought now, I catch myself, no, I'm going to transition it, because we've already worked through it, we've processed it, so now it's easier to catch it and put it in the right direction. It's so amazing, really. Well, there's so much. We'll just end with this, and we have this theme as we launch the course, but the theme that really God put in my heart for 2021, for those people that will join us in this journey, is to be in the best shape of your life. And can you just give everybody an encouragement that this is a good focus to have, and whatever thoughts you have on being in the best shape of your life?
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, and I really, to be honest, being in the best shape of your life is it's really a choice that we make. And I recently was just aware again of the fact that I really believe, for us as believers, God has amazing things for us. And, sometimes the voices around us and the obstacles and the chaos, and, I don't know about maybe everywhere in the world, but America is kind of in chaos. And I think sometimes we feel limited by everything that's going on around us, but it's not obstacles that keep us from having our best self, because God wants us to live our best life. God wants us to grow. He wants us to fulfill the call he has for us. He wants us to, have successful families and successful lives. And, because he loves us, and because when we are those people, when we're our best selves, we have our best families. When we have our best families, we have our best communities. When we have our best communities, we reach out and we make better communities around us. And so that was really what I felt, thinking about, because, from our church perspective, as we're talking about doing this, together, as our church is coming in to do this, for our church right now, 2021, can be the best shape of your life, just because you make a choice to step in. And when you make a choice to step in, God strengthens us to do that. And, and learning, it's not always easy, but when you step in and learn, the things that he gives you to learn, or learn, how you relate to yourself, or those types of things, it just makes growth so much. So that was what I felt like, that, 2021, we can be in the best shape of our life despite obstacles. Hopefully 2021 is better than 2020, but whether the obstacles are there or not, your life can be amazing. You can grow, and God has amazing things for you. And it's just a matter of stepping in and doing it. That's what I found for me.
That's so good. And I think especially with the way the world is right now and everything happening, it can be so easy just to resolve ourselves and say it's just it's too challenging. And of course, we have to all just do what we can do, but we shouldn't just say, it's just too challenging, right? We can take one area of our life and say, I want to develop skills, I want to build momentum, I want to grow, I want to heal. Maybe for some people it's healing something that's been holding on for a long time, and that's your growth point for this year. And it could be in so many different areas. And I have another teaching on that, and kind of the vision on the best shape of your life that our viewers and audience can listen to as well. So awesome. Pastor Chera, this has been great, and we could keep talking, but I think you've shared so much gold and wisdom already, And I just want to thank you for being, being here in this interview and talking, and just for also the coaching and what's happened. It's just such a joy to work together in that capacity. And I'm so looking forward to working with Harvest Life and seeing more people just shatter glass ceilings of limitation and grow, really grow to new levels, which is what God's put inside of us, is just keep growing, going from glory to glory, multiplying, taking dominion, subduing, all that stuff. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being on Limitless today. God bless.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
I hope that you enjoyed that interview and discussion with Pastor Chera. I know I got a lot out of it, and I loved some of her points. Like, one of them was do it afraid, right? That's something I think we have to always remind ourselves. What's an area of our life where we need to break a limitation and just do it afraid? And another key point that we brought out was about being self-aware and assessing our thoughts and transforming thoughts that are not just bad and negative, but also the ones that are disempowering us. And those can be sneaky. So I actually want to invite all of you to join me in this journey in 2021 of being in the best shape of your life, and to join our online course, Relationship with Self. So you can be anywhere in the world and join us. It's all via online, and we will put the link into our show notes, and I would love to see you there. God bless.